Afternoon, everybody, and thank you for joining MLive's Navigating Finance event presented by the law offices of David L. Carrier. We've got a great program today with great speakers, panel discussion, Q&A, and interactive sessions. We'll have a Q&A session with all of our speakers at the end of the event. Hold on, we'll wait for that music. There we go. So at the end, we will do the Q&A. To submit your questions, just type them in the chat or the Q&A box. As a reminder, make sure you're picking everybody, not just panelists, because that will just go to me and you don't want my advice. You want to choose everybody plus panelists so we can see the questions. And also throughout the program, we're going to ask you some poll questions to get your opinion and see what you guys are up to. Now, our first question, it's pretty easy. How many people are you watching Navigating Finances with? Are you watching by yourself? Are you with a bunch of friends? Just let us know in the poll right now. Okay, before we get started, want to give a big thank you to our sponsor, once again, the law offices of David L. Carrier, PC, and Southern Michigan Bank and Trust Wealth Management. And here is a short message from the law offices of David L. Carrier.
If you're wondering about elder law, that's the teeny tiny little insignificant bit of estate planning that nobody ever does, and we don't want to waste our time with that, right? But it has to do with you while you're alive. Maybe that would be important, huh? Think about that. Pursuit of happiness. You gotta pursue a lot of happiness when you're dead, right? Now, you can blight your family. You can do that. A lot of people do. You know, they leave chaos and mayhem behind. That does happen. But it doesn't have to. And it's up to you 100% if you're going to let it.
And David Carrier will be along shortly. But before we get to him, I'd like to bring in our moderator for today's event, Lindsay Moore. Lindsay Moore is a reporter for MLive's statewide economy team. She reports on the labor force, real estate, the restaurant industry, and previously she covered local businesses and community in Kalamazoo. Lindsay, how are you?
Hey, Eric, I'm good. Thank you for having me today. So yeah, with today's event, we really want to have just a statewide conversation about what's important for financial empowerment for Michiganders at all stages of life. So our goal is really to provide some information and some resources on investment and retirement planning, protecting yourself and your savings in case of long-term care, that is, some mortgage advice and real estate investments. We're really got the whole gamut today. So we're excited, and we're also honored to have Nicole Curtis, New York Times best-selling author and HGTV's host for Rehab Addict. She's going to be with us today talking about renovating, flipping houses, and increasing your home's.
Awesome, Lindsay. You hang tight real quick. We're going to bring in your first guest. Let's jump into it. It is on retirement savings. And today we have Alan Lockwood joining us. As a reminder, any and all questions, put them in the chat or the Q&A box. Alan recently joined the Southern Michigan Bank and Trust as a Vice President Wealth Management Officer. Alan has worked in the financial industry for over a decade and is a licensed certified financial planner and a chartered retirement planning counselor. Alan Lockwood, welcome, my friend.
Thank you, Eric. Thanks, everyone, for having me. Happy to be here.
Hi, Alan. Thank you so much for doing this with us. We're excited to kind of pick your brain and get some good advice for the folks at home. So to start off, actually, we have a poll question for our audience that I think is relevant to kind of start with. We're asking our audience, what age did they start thinking about retirement? And that was a question I had on my list for you. I'm in my 20s. Is it too early for me to start retirement? What's kind of your general advice for folks?
It really, as younger professionals, one of the most important impacts of retirement is time. When do I start putting those savings away? And there's certain benchmarks that you can shoot for. And if we've heard of the 10 times rule, by the time I reach my mid to late 60s, I should have 10 times my income, but a lot of times we're comfortable kicking that can down the road, but the earlier we start, the much easier it is to accomplish that goal.
Sure. Yeah. So when people finally, stop kicking the can down the road to kind of pick it up and decide what they're going to do with it, what's your best advice for really maximizing those savings? What kind of savings vehicles do you recommend?
Well, we focus on what is the most tax efficient way to approach retirement. So we start with our employer's plan. Maybe they're going to kick in some match. We're going to have something known as institutional pricing, which is almost like having a coupon on the stock market. If you think about healthcare, if I'm in a group healthcare plan, it's probably cheaper than if I had to go out and purchase my own individual plan. So we start with what we have offered through our employer, and then where do we go next? What if we're maximizing that? Then we're looking into individual retirement accounts or IRAs, and then we have healthcare as a concern in retirement, and there's only one account where we never have to pay tax, and those are our health savings accounts. So think of it as a progression. Maybe I'm maximizing my 401k. Then where do I go next? Is it the health savings account? Is it the IRA? If you're maximizing all three of those, you're saving quite a bit, and then the sky's the limit with just the regular old investment accounts. So those are good conversations to have with your advisors on what makes the best sense for your household.
Sure. And two of those that you mentioned, I think, are probably the ones that are, at least I hear the most often about, 401ks and Roth IRAs. Do you have a little bit of advice about, the difference between what would make one a, more suitable pick for someone?
So that's a conversation that we have quite often. Alan, I have a pre-tax, I have a Roth 401k, and I have this, I've heard of these Roth IRAs. What option should I go with? And really how that conversation goes is north of 90%, like around 92. So we'll say 9 out of 10 folks, when they retire, they are paying themselves less in retirement than they made when they were working. So with that logic, 90% of folks will be in a lower tax bracket. So pre-tax makes sense, right? Well, are we comfortable assuming that taxes are never going to increase? That could change at any moment. So then other folks say, okay, I'm going to take advantage of this Roth. I get paid every other week or twice a month. And when I retire, they're not going to continually send me that check. So why don't I pay the taxes now because I can afford to? But tax laws could change there. So don't throw your hands up and be overwhelmed with that decision. The important part is your saving. But if you want to think of a good benchmark, younger professionals, you're probably at your lowest income earning potential, maybe Roth makes sense. Folks that are closer to retirement, they're at their highest income level they've ever been, maybe it doesn't make sense at that point. But then there's a tax implication too, where what if I'm on a fence? I'm going to go from the 12% up to the 22% tax bracket, and all I had to do was put 1% more into my 401k. Well, I would rather save for retirement than pay more in taxes any day of the week. So you want to talk to your tax professionals, you want to talk to your advisor, and they can help with. It's not just what tax laws could change, there's other things that you factor in.
Sure. Yeah. And so I've heard you mention a couple of times it really depends what age you're at, right? Of course, that makes sense when you're thinking long-term goals. Are there targets that you guys advise for, whether that is, when you hit a certain age or a certain salary, that you should really, be looking for these long-term goals in terms of, benchmarks that people should have in their minds?
Absolutely. And especially early on, we mentioned before, time is one of the biggest impacts. If I'm looking for something to shoot for, once I reach the age of 30, I should have 1 times my annual income. So it's really a combination of age and income. When I'm 40, now I have 3 times my income. When I'm 50, now I have 6 times my income. And then it puts you on a trajectory where you should have 10 times your income once you're in your mid to late 60s. That would set us up for a pretty comfortable retirement.
Okay. Well, I guess given that information, it's a good time to poll our listeners to ask, how close they are to their retirement goals, or interested to know how far along they are in that journey. So we've talked a lot about the saving part. but once I have this big pile of cash, can we talk a little bit about spending now? So when you finally reach that retirement age and you have this savings, can you talk a little bit about the planning that goes in? Should I be front loading that, or, hoarding it until more end of life? What's the best way to really make that money stretch?
So we work hard. We don't just work for our health. We save as much as we possibly can. And your income plan is just as important as your retirement savings plan was for your entire career. So here's what we shoot for. When we're taking inventory of our expenses in retirement, there are going to be some things, our must-haves are hard to avoid. If I have my mortgage paid off, great, but I still have property taxes, I still have to keep the lights on, I still have insurance, keep food on the table. There are bills that are going to be in every budget for your entire retirement. So what's a good place to be? Well, I want to have reliable sources there to cover bills that are going to be there every month for the rest of my life. If I have reached a point where my reliable sources, Social Security, pension, can cover all of my essential expenses, those must-haves, those hard to avoid, now the money that I worked hard to save, I can actually afford the retirement that I envisioned, the fun stuff, the discretionary expenses. And so that's what we have exposed to the market. Those are our variable sources. So we're not front-ending, we're not taking, pushing things off further on into our retirement. We're using variable sources to cover the fun stuff. I can always postpone a trip to see my grandkids, but I can't tell the county that I live in that I'm not paying my taxes that year. But a good thing to shoot for is maybe I'm only withdrawing about 4 to 5% of my retirement savings each year.
Okay, so definitely, so there again, it's a lot of planning in every step of the process, and that's why folks like you are advisors for this, because it's a lot of work. I know another question that comes up a lot of times for folks is, when is it a good choice for early retirement? Can I do that? Is that feasible and financially stable for me to do that? Do you have some opinions on, withdrawing Social Security early?
Well, the tough part about retiring earlier is there's this bridge that we have to gap. And if I'm retiring at an early age, I'm not going to have access to Medicare. And when you look at the average couple retiring today at Medicare eligibility, so age 65, they're going to spend close to $300,000 on healthcare over the course of their retirement. But each year that I retire before that, I'm paying $20,000, $25,000 each year just trying to bridge that gap. And when retiring early, now I also have Social Security is pushed off. Maybe I'm not eligible to draw Social Security at that particular time. It's more expensive to retire earlier. It's possible, but you just have to save a little bit more so you can make sure you can get to that Social Security eligible age and that Medicare eligible age as well.
You mentioned something about, tax laws can change. And I think that's interesting because we talk so much about planning, but like you said, there are variables that we just won't know until they happen. Since we're talking about Social Security, I'm curious if you have an opinion of where you think that might be in 10, 20, 30 years, if people should bank on that, or if you think that might change.
Well, the short answer to give you confidence is yes. Social Security will be there. The fund's going to be depleted. They just sent out the new report saying maybe it's going to be gone in 2033, 2034, but just with payroll taxes alone, they're going to be able to cover 75% of the liabilities for almost the next century. So if I'm a young professional, I'm 20, 30 years out from retirement, I'm going to see some adjustments. And maybe worst case scenario, I only get about 3/4 of what I was promised. But I know a lot of young professionals are saying, Alan, I'm just not going to plan for it. It'll be there. It's just going to have to make some adjustments. For the folks that are within 10 years of retirement, they may not see any. So if I want to be conservative, I see $2,000 on my Social Security statement, maybe I plan on only getting $1,600. But yes, it'll be there.
Well, that's reassuring to me personally. Selfishly, that question was a little bit for me. I guess I'll ask you one other a little bit selfish question. I was talking with my parents who also have a financial advisor they've been talking about retirement with. And they were curious if there's any advice for, if they want to be snowbirds, if they want to go to different states, if they should think about different laws and different tax laws and such. Is that conversations that you guys have at your office?
So we are discussing that, especially at that initial stage when you're talking about, how much do I need to have the retirement that I envision, but what are my taxes going to look like in this particular state versus that one? And you have to factor those things in. And it's just a simple process of taking inventory. But yes, you definitely want to be have a good understanding of what those expenses may be. Some states, there are no income taxes. Some states, their property taxes are much higher than others. Maybe that helps determine where you're going to go when you're becoming that snowbird as well.
Well, I know it, we're here in Michigan, so we had to ask it, right? Obviously, it's something on everyone's mind. I mean, I've peppered you with quite a few questions, but is there anything that is conversations you're having when clients come to you that I haven't hit on, something that you feel like, oh, this is one that nobody asks that they need to know?
Well, you always hear when we're talking about investing or retirement planning, you need to have diverse investments. Well, it's really important once we reach retirement, we have diverse income streams. There are things that we're going to have to tackle in retirement where we can, lack of a better term, kind of manipulate where we fall tax bracket-wise. Yes, we get a Social Security benefit, but unfortunately that benefit is taxable. So now we have to be familiar with other things like provisional income and how much of that Social Security is going to be taxed. And so that sometimes falls on the back burner, but we make sure that folks are aware of that when we're factoring in, hey, how much can you pay yourself on a monthly basis so you don't run out of money?
Well, not running out of money sounds like the key goal. Like you said, we don't just work for our health, we do it so that we can be done one day and really enjoy it, right? Well, we so appreciate all of your expertise here. I think that we already have some questions in the chat, which I'll remind folks that they can continue to be in. Matt will be with us and he'll come back, or excuse me, Alan. But I was going to ask, where can we find you and Matt if people have some more in-depth conversations and really want to look at their finances with you?
Well, we're headquartered here. Our wealth management is in Portage, Michigan, but we have wealth management advisors across the state of Michigan, Coldwater, Marshall, Three Rivers. You make sure that you just look for your local office and put us to work. That's what we're here for.
Perfect. Thank you so much, Alan. This was really helpful.
Yeah, thanks for having me.
That was awesome,
All right.
you guys. Thank you, Lindsay. Thank you, Alan. And like Lindsay said, Alan will be back to do Q&A. So as you have questions, make sure you dump those into the chat and we'll get to them at the end. Next up, we have David Carrier joining us. You might know David from TV or radio. David is a popular estate planning and elder law attorney. He and his team have been serving families in Michigan for the last 35 years. Let's make sure we put all of our questions for David in the chat or the Q&A box so we can get to them at the speaker Q&A at the end. And so without further ado, a man that I absolutely love talking to and hearing from, the one, the only, David Carrier. David?
Thank you, Eric. Thank you very much. It's thank you for those kind words, What a crowd, huh? What a crowd we got here tonight. Wow, it's an MLive crowd. That means it's a great crowd. It means it's engaged. That's wonderful. And when MLive told me I had 10 to cover what I needed to cover, I thought, jeepers, 10. It's kind of long, but I've got all the material we're going to need here till about 3 o'clock, tomorrow morning, I guess, because we've got 10 hours of material to cover. 15, I don't know how I could do that, but 10, I'm up for that. What? Minutes? 10 minutes? How am I supposed to get through all this in 10 minutes? I can't do this in 10 minutes. Oh, man. Sorry about that. 10 minutes. How about I'll go for the 15 now. Still got the 15 minutes be fine? Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. Well, anyway, we've got some people telling you how to navigate your finances. Most of the folks that we're talking to today, we're going to be talking to you, are people who are going to help you figure out how to hang on to what you've earned. Hopefully how to grow it a little bit, right? Well, I don't know anything about that. I can't help you there. The money tree, that's what these guys are all good at. What do I know? All I know is how to hang on to what you've got. That's why I always say estate planning, elder law is the rest of the story. How you earned it, that's your story. How you keep it, how you grow it, that's your financial advisors. That's these other folks that's their part of the story. I'm the rest of the story. How do you make sure that you don't lose what you have? Now, when it comes to estate planning, everybody wants to avoid probate, save taxes, get it to the kids. I sympathize, I understand, and that's what we're going to be talking about tonight. Exactly how does that whole probate process work? How do trusts work? Everyone's always asking, wills versus trust, which one is the right one? Of course, it's all individual, it's all up to you, but there are some things you need to know. In fact, I promise you that by the end of, if you'd given me 10 hours, you'd have a law degree, but in 15 minutes, I can get you better set up than most attorneys promise you. You'll know more about how probate works on a fundamental level than they do. I do want to take a little side course here and just put a bug in your ear, because we don't have 15 hours. I'd have had time. 10 hours? Yes. 10 minutes, 15 minutes? No, I don't have time this time, but come back for navigating estate planning. That'll next month. That'll be good. We'll spend some more time on it. The thing that everybody ignores, the elephant in the room, okay? If there's an elephant in the room, pretty hard to ignore. The elephant in the room is long-term care. I just saw estimates, $2.5 trillion with a TR, trillion dollars in the year 2030. 2030 is not that far away, but that's what they're talking about. Federal government says 70%. If you're 65 now, you have a 70% chance of winding up in skilled care. On average, 3 years, and 20% will be in there for more than 5 years. Are you with me on that? It's a big problem. You got to deal with that long-term care thing. If you don't, it will absolutely eat you up. Long-term care is the way Michigan goes broke. Middle-class Michigan goes broke, okay? But we'll talk about that more later on. What we're going to talk about right now is, how does all that probate stuff work? How do trusts work? Now, some of you are familiar with, there's a Dutch family around here, Meyer, something like that. Anyway, if you've ever been to Meyer, have you ever been to Meyer, right? And gone in for a loaf of bread? You ever tried to go into Meyer for a loaf of bread? Fellas, going into Cabela's for some fish hooks, or maybe to Lowe's for a box of nails. And what happens every single time? Well, you wind up with a whole pile of stuff that you're happy you have. Oh boy, are you happy you have it, right? But you didn't go in planning to have it. This is how most people go through life. They own everything in their own name. They're like the shopper wandering around in the supermarket of life. Isn't that a beautiful metaphor? The supermarket of life, with or the sports shop, or the handy, the hardware store of life, owning everything in their own name. Okay, this is you own everything in your own. Your hair was a little bit longer, different color at that time, I get it, but anyway, you own everything in your own name. And the question is, that's fine as far as it goes, but if you slip and fall, what happens? Oh my goodness, look at that. You slipped and fell and you made a mess. Okay, a will is the note in the mess. Are you with me on this? Yeah, you had a little note in your hand where you wanted that stuff to go. If you would just so happen to slip and fall, that's what your will is. And when you slip and fall, clean up on aisle 3, out comes Justin Bieber. The Biebs here, this guy, this is the probate court. Say hello, hello. The probate court is going to clean up your mess. Okay, that's the job of the probate court. You had complete control over your stuff. You have no control anymore. Out comes the probate court to clean up your mess. And if they find that little note in this mess, wouldn't that be grand? That's your will. And you kind of hope that he doesn't read too well, of course, so maybe he follows it, maybe doesn't, right? That's the probate court. Now, when Justin shows up not far behind is this character. This is what we call probate costs. Have you ever heard of probate costs? It's a two-headed monster. Half of it is government, right? Taxes, fees, all that kind of thing. The other half is mostly attorney fees. Mostly about 80% of probate costs, which 4 to 10% of the estate, 4 to 10% of what you die with, 4 to 10% of your leftovers, or the mess you left on the floor, this guy's going to gobble up. And 80% of it goes to the head that we call hourly bill. Are you with me? Get that? Isn't that funny, huh? Hourly bill. That's what we call this guy. Guess why we call him hourly bill? I bet you know. Anyway, probate costs come right along. Hourly bill. Right behind probate costs in Michigan is this guy. This is what we call estate recovery. If your stuff goes through probate and the probate court leaves anything and hourly bill leaves anything, the state of Michigan wants the rest of it if you received help with long-term care. Will you need help with long-term care? I don't know. Are you in the 70% or the 30%? Now raise your hand if you can afford $12,000 to $15,000 a month. $12,000 to $15,000 a month is what skilled nursing care costs. Costs more, of course, if you're at home. You could go to assisted living because there it's only $6,000 to $7,500 a month. Oh, that would be easy to pay, wouldn't it, huh? Take that out of the Christmas club, no problem. Well, when you go broke, as thousands of Michiganians do or Michiganders, it's up to you. I'm agnostic on that one. Anyway, when you run out of money, when you go broke, the next thing is Medicaid, not Medicare. Medicaid is what pays for long-term care. And when you die, state of Michigan, I call this Gretchen. You know, I just like that name. It's a wonderful name. It's a super name, has very positive connotations for me. So Gretchen is going to come and get the leftovers. Are you with me on this? If there are any leftovers after hourly bill is through with you, that's the probate process. Now, many people say probate bad. I don't like probate. I don't understand why. As one of the beneficiaries of hourly bill, you can understand why lawyers like. Can you? Am I getting through to you folks? I mean, do you understand why lawyers like probate? Okay. Well, here's the deal. Most people like to say, I want to avoid probate. How do I avoid? They do a trust. This is a trust. How does a trust work? Really very simple. Here you are again, whether it's Cabela's, Meyer, Spartan Stores, Piggly Wiggly, I don't care. Anyway, the idea is you set up this trust, you create this trust. Lots of you have binders, very thick binders, right? With padded covers and embossed gold and silver, and they look lovely. And they create this thing for you. And inside is a memo that tells you, hey, when you have one of these, you should take your stuff and put it in the trust. Yay, life is one sweet song. If you want to grab the stuff, grab the stuff. If you want to leave it in there, leave it in there. You want to play with it, dance around, that's fine. It's your stuff. Key, here's the key. Are you ready for this? What happens when you slip and fall? Let's find out. Hey, look at that. No mess. Are you with me on this? Your stuff is in the trust, so there is no mess. Nothing for Justin to do, nothing for hourly bill to do, nothing for Gretchen to do. That's how a trust avoids probate. Question, why do 96, according to one survey, maybe it's 99, maybe it's 93.5, I don't know. But most trusts fail. Almost all trusts fail. And the reason they fail is because when you got that big, wonderful binder that you paid, what, at least 10 or 15 bucks for, right? Right? At least 10 or $15 anyway. All right, when you got that wonderful trust, right? In there is a memo. And the memo says, hey, don't forget to put your stuff in the trust. You didn't read the memo, did you? No, most people don't. And most people who try to follow out the memo fail. Most people fail because it's very frustrating, because it's not as easy as they said it was. Here, Law Office of David Carrier, we've got a whole team. We've got 10 people. All they do all day is put stuff in trust. That's all they do. You get a funding coach and it takes months. You want me to sugarcoat this for you? Forget about it. I'm not sugarcoating it. That's what it takes for your trust to work. It takes months of work after you sign the darn thing. Because here's what's going on, really. And here's why hourly bill absolutely loves that you did not read the memo, because you've got a trust. Yes, you do. But guess what? Your stuff is still all in your name. Now what happens when you slip and fall? Oh, we got a mess again. Yeah, but I got a trust. Yeah, but you made a mess. Yeah, but I got a trust. Yeah, but you made a mess. Yeah, but I got a trust. Yeah, but you made a mess. And out comes Justin, happy to clean up on aisle 3. Job security for the probate court. They love it. Job security for hourly bill. Job security for Gretchen. Now you know more than most attorneys will ever tell you about how probate works, what a trust is, what a will is, what the difference is. Okay, any questions, just ask me in the chat. I'll be back a little bit later, I think. Yeah? What? I've got another hour? Excellent, super. So let's keep going. No, I mean, look, the probate judges try really hard, and there's an awful lot of ins and outs to it, but this is why they fail. And the thing that absolutely grinds my gears, I got to tell you, it's terrible. Everybody knows. Your banker knows. Your insurance agent knows. Your financial advisor knows. Everybody knows you didn't put your stuff in the trust. Everybody knows it. Okay? It's not that you couldn't, but listen, in your job, think about when you were working, if you're retired, right? Think about your job right now. If you failed 96% of the time, would you still have a job? Then why do the lawyers? Because they're not dealing with you. They're dealing with your kids. Nobody finds out that the trust failed till after you die. And when you die and you go to the lawyer and you say, hey, I got a trust, the kids go, not you, you're dead, remember? The kids go, hey, mom and dad did a trust. We're going to avoid probate here. And hourly bill says, no, you're not, because they didn't put the stuff in the trust. And you're like, what do you mean they didn't put the stuff in there? They're supposed to put the stuff. Oh, well, hey, I told them. I gave them the memo. Let me see that big fat binder over there. See right here? Oh, looky there. See, I told them. Not my fault. Let's go through probate. Yay. That's how it works. That's how it really works. And now you know the rest of the story. Good day.
Thank you, Paul Harvey. That was delightful. David Carrier, everybody, and as David said, he will be back for the Q&A in just about a half hour. But thank you, my friend. That was awesome. Okay, up next, we have 2 very special guests joining us to help you make your home dreams a reality. First up, it's Emily Schoen. She's an Ann Arbor realtor and interior design social media influencer. She enjoys combining her aesthetic talent and experience in tracking real estate to help her clients realize their goals, whether it be seeing potential in a purchase or maximizing value in the home that they're selling. Emily, how are you?
Hi, I'm great. Thanks. How are you?
Awesome. And next up, Darren Montreal. He has 20 years of mortgage industry experience, having held positions in retail, wholesale, and operation team management. Darren is a business development specialist for Michigan State Housing Development Authority Homeownership Division. He also provides homeownership program information, technical assistance, education seminars, and does that all in Southeastern Michigan and in the UP. Again, don't be shy. Get those questions either in the chat or in the Q&A. Let's bring back in who else are we bringing in? Lauren?
It's me.
There you go. Lindsay, there you go.
Hey, how are
Lindsay,
you?
welcome back, Lindsay. I will
Hey,
turn this over
Emily
to
and
you.
Darren. Yes, yeah, don't forget it being so quickly. So glad to have you both, because I have been hearing about the housing market nonstop, and I'm sure some of our audience is with me on that. It feels like everybody is trying to buy or sell, and no matter what they're doing, they have something to complain about. So I'm hoping that you will ease some of their frustration, answer their questions, and yeah, let's just get started. So as you guys know, there are a lot of first-time buyers out there. The millennial age group is finally getting into that phase of life. That's something that we want to know from our audience too. We have a poll question for them about the first time that they bought their house, how old they were. And so I'm curious then, for those first-time buyers, if you guys could speak to, what kind of paperwork, what kind of finances do they need to get ready to really have their ducks in a row so that they can hit the ground running?
Yeah, Lindsay, it's a great question. And being a first-time home buyer can be really overwhelming. It feels like there's so many things to do, but really the first thing that you want to do is meet with a real estate agent in your area, an expert, and also a lender. One of the first most important things to do is to get pre-approved. So that you know what budget you can be looking in, you can understand what your monthly payment will be within that budget, and you can really be like well equipped to jump in to your search.
And I'd like to add that I think it's important for people to put a team together, get with that lender, because everybody's finances are different. Not everybody has the same income sources, et cetera. So you need to meet with a lender to establish that budget, but also find out what programs might be available to you and what you can take advantage of, because not every lender is going to offer every resource to a buyer.
Sure, that's great advice. Yeah, that you can't just assume that'll work for everybody. I guess, Emily, I'll ask the question differently too. As a real estate agent, what do you tell folks to do if they're selling, then if they're on the other side of it? What should they have ready to sell then?
Yeah, that's a great question. So again, you want to connect with a local real estate agent who can really kind of guide you through the whole process. But what you want to start doing, especially early on in selling, is just really getting your home ready. Your agent's going to be able to guide you through the process with like the paperwork and things like that. But really what's on the homeowner is really helping to get things ready for showings and photographs and everything like that. It's really more about your home.
Sure. Well, I'll piggyback right off of that. I know that that's part of your expertise and your area of interest as, kind of the influencer part of your job. So you get to kind of see, especially for people like me that are very interested in real estate, get to see the ins and outs of that. What are some things that you find that really make a house wow? When you walk in, oh, I want to buy this. What do you suggest people do if they're looking to sell?
Such a good question. And one of my favorite things to do is to really talk to sellers about some easy and affordable ways to make your home really shine. I think sometimes when we live in a home for a long time, people who are living in homes for 20 years and then selling, you might not notice things because you pass them every day that somebody else might notice, like a new buyer coming in, really looking at little details that you might not see anymore. So having someone come in, a lot of times paint can do so much. And it's one of the most affordable ways to kind of update your home. So fresh coat of paint is great. Also, if you have wood floors, having them refinished can be really helpful if it's been a long time since that's happened, or replacing flooring is another really great way to update your home, make it really attractive to buyers. Staging is also really effective. Even in a seller's market, I still recommend it. I think it's a great tool.
Definitely. Yeah. And you mentioned that seller's market, it's so competitive right now. That's what I hear from a lot of folks that are looking. Do either or both of you some advice then for folks when they are looking, they're going to be asking, how do I know if this is really priced fairly, right? It's a competitive market. It's a seller's market. Everybody is going to try to get as much cash as they can, but tell us a little bit about that process to make sure that that you're getting a good deal and that you don't end up, house poor in a couple months.
Well, I can speak to the fact that it's important to have established a team early in your process, people that you trust, people that are going to give you good advice. You don't want to put your team together late in the process and then find somebody that's just trying to sell you a home. You want somebody that's going to work for you and be in your best interest, almost a fiduciary. And they're going to establish values in the lending process, get appraisals. And they're gonna help you walk through the home inspection process to make sure that you're aware of the value of your home and its condition.
That's a great answer. I completely agree. Also, just sitting down with your agent, after you see a home that you're excited about, want to write an offer on, and reviewing the comparable properties that have recently sold in the neighborhood with your agent, to really understand, the value that they're asking. Is it really there in that home? That's just going to be really important.
Sure. Yeah. And Darren, you've mentioned a couple of times having that team that you trust to make sure. And I know a lot of your work is helping folks transition, especially renting to buying a home. And that, is there anything that you find that comes up, like a hidden cost or something that people just aren't expecting that might be helpful to give our audience that tip?
Well, there's a lot of costs associated with financing, and that's why it's important to get with your lenders before you have a home in mind, before there's a clock running and there's pressure associated with it, to make sure that you reviewed all the costs, they understand what the commitment is and understand what different financial products are available to them, what type of mortgages and other resources that can be leveraged. So it's not so much a specific hidden cost, but more of being able to review the entire package before you get into a position where you have to make decisions fast.
Well, that is really the theme of this whole event, right? Is that long-term planning, setting a goal, knowing what your finances will look like, not just today, not just tomorrow, but what do you want your whole life to look like, right? Which is actually a great time then again to ask our audience. We have one more poll question for them about, how long have you been a homeowner? How long have you been in your home? And Emily, you mentioned something that I think is really going to stick with me, at least, about when we're in our homes for a long time, then we pass things that you kind of forget about how maybe a nook or something that was really what drew you to it. And then now you take it for granted, right? Is there anything else that people can really increase their market value to build or to add a home improvement than the next person is going to love?
Absolutely. So right now, especially, I think from every single buyer client that I have, everyone's looking for at least one home office, if not two. Obviously, with everybody working from home with COVID, this has just become such a huge need for buyers. And so if you can, add that home office into your home. So if it's staging a certain room to really function as a great office, I've seen people get really creative with like area in the basement that they had, but they dress it up really beautifully and make it a really nice home office. A home I saw recently, they actually had a tough shed installed in the backyard, but it was insulated and heated and cooled. And, you walked into it and it was like this beautiful little office space. My clients were like fighting each other for it before we even, talked about the home. So that's becoming like a huge priority for buyers. And I'm seeing that's, when they go to then compare properties that we've looked at, the home office always comes up as a huge plus when it is in a home.
Oh, certainly. I'll speak from experience on that. That was on my checklist, certainly, even just looking in the midst of a pandemic, especially. But and so you mentioned too that as folks are moving around, and right now our audience is asking that question about how long they've been in their home. But do you have any insight about, when is the right time to downsize? I know a lot of folks that thought about that during the pandemic, right? If I'm in a house and it's just me and I'm in the house all day, I have too much space or maybe not enough, I'm getting into something bigger. But what's been your experience with clients then when they choose to downsize?
Yeah, well, with what's going on right now, now is a great time. It is such a seller's market. You can really cash in the equity on your home. And then when you go to buy, we've got really low interest rates right now. So you can take advantage of that to kind of into whatever's next for you. So right now is actually a great time to be a seller and a buyer. So now it's really good.
Sure. Well, it might be a similar answer, but I'll ask Darren a similar question about folks that maybe are going from renting to buying a house. I guess what's your pitch to them about why do it now? Why finally, jump off the diving board and make that leap into some investments?
Well, I think some of the things that people aren't aware of is that there's a lot of great programs out there to help people get into the housing market. There's down payment assistance loans, there's federal tax credits, and there's a lot of education products to help people become aware of those and what communities are offering those programs. The state of Michigan offers statewide down payment assistance and federal tax credits to help people make homes easier to get into and more affordable to stay in. So right now is a great time because people, there's all types of different incentives and resources available to you.
Yeah, I think that's a huge relief to hear right now, especially because it can feel really scary to make a very permanent decision like housing in a pandemic. And I've definitely come across many people saying the same thing through my reporting on real estate. But, as Emily mentioned, with the low interest rates, it's kind of like this is the time to jump, right? So I'm hoping that our audience members have some more questions for you guys about, what's on their minds in terms of what will get them to make that leap. We know that you guys are a wealth of knowledge, but is there anything, I guess, that I didn't ask that you guys often hear from folks that maybe I haven't hit on yet that our audience would like to hear?
I'm asked about staging a lot and is it really impactful? And I know we already kind of touched on it a little bit, but I do want to emphasize how helpful that can really be, kind of communicating a lifestyle in your home to any potential buyer coming through, and also reaching out to professionals to help you through the process. It's just so important to get everybody, like your team, together early on. That can't be more important.
I would say one of the most common reactions when I talk to people about the types of products that Mishta provides is that they always say, I wish I would have known about that when I was buying a home. And I think it's imperative to get with professionals. And there's also in every community across the state of Michigan, a network of home buyer education providers. They're HUD certified. A lot of their resources are free. And you can go in there, find out about the resources, find out what's available to you. And unless you're a professional or in this business, these are things that you probably wouldn't casually know about.
Sure. Yeah. Well, actually, that's it. Speaking of, people wishing they knew about you, what's the best way to find you then, Darren? If someone is on this call and says, "Oh, I need his expertise."
Well, you can always go to the website. So that's michigan.gov/homeownership. And it has an array of contacts from our statewide network of lenders, home buyer education providers, and it'll give you a breakdown on what type of products that we provide.
Okay. And Emily, I know that you have a strong social media presence. I gotta let you plug that so people can see the staging that you're doing, and tell us where we can find Ann Arbor.
Yeah, thank you. So my best way probably to find me is on Instagram. I'm at Emily.A.Schoen, SCHOEN. And on there, you'll see all of my email and phone and
Best way to get to you. Oh, I'm so psyched for our audience to have some of these questions answered, to know you guys a little bit better in the Q&A afterwards, which again, don't be shy, drop them in. That's why we have them here, folks. They're offering free advice, so do it now. Also have Nicole Curtis coming up too to talk a little bit more about flipping and renovating, which I'm really stoked to hear some of her ideas. I can't wait to hear what she has going on, especially since, Emily really teed us up with some good ideas for what we can be adding to our homes to make that market value even more appealing to everybody. But I'll hand it back over to you, Eric.
Thank you, Lindsay. Actually, we're going to flip things a little bit, Linz, as we're waiting for Nicole to jump in. So we're actually going to do some Q&A right now. So Emily and Darren, if you can jump back in, as well as David and Alan, that would be amazing. Emily, since you're the first one on the screen, we had a question that is right in your alley, and I think actually is a great primer. The question was, when someone uses the word staging, what does that mean as opposed to just decluttering, right? Putting the 425 books in a pile. What go beyond that, and what does staging mean in your neck of the woods?
That's such a great question, and it can actually mean a couple different things depending on what process you choose to go down with selling your home. So if you choose to move out and then your home is completely vacant, a staging company can come in and bring in furniture and accessories and art, and really kind of make the home be completely staged with things that are not the seller's property. Another way, if the seller is choosing to stay in the home while it's being shown while they're selling, that's actually something that I kind of specialize in, where I'm able to come in and show my sellers exactly where to declutter, how to move furniture around, just because the way we live in a home sometimes doesn't make it feel the most open or the most approachable from buyers. So maybe your sofa is facing the TV, but to show your house, it might be better against a different wall. So I come in and kind of help give that guidance. And that's another form of staging that allows the sellers to, keep living in their house while they're trying to sell.
Awesome. Alan, this next one I'm going to throw to you. It's about this rule of 72 and how long it will take me to double my investment in a certain number of years. Can you kind of expand on that financial algebra?
Yeah, I would ask everyone to visualize it and then crinkle it up and throw it away, because our market is, but all jokes aside, our market is so rapid now. It's volatile. You see what we went through in early 2020. We saw significant losses in that first quarter, but by the end of the summer, we already recouped those losses. Maybe it was something we could have used a couple decades ago, but now it's really setting the expectations of we're going to deal with volatile markets and we're in this long term, and you got to know what to expect. Why are investors not getting the returns that they're promised? Well, when emotion comes into play, we do the opposite of what we've been taught. You want to buy low, sell high. Well, guess what we're doing? We see the market go down 35%. We're selling low. We're buying back in high when we have more confidence. So throw away all the rules that we had, and your money should double every 7 years, every 10 years. Throw all of those away. Look at it long term, and that way we're not hitting the panic button and trying to time the market.
What you mean you can't time the market? That's not how that works?
I used to share with my clients, we should be smart enough to be dumb enough to do nothing. Because we're more often than not, we're hurting ourselves instead of helping ourselves. Maybe we time it right once or twice, but jumping in and out, we are losing our chance to recoup the losses that we just saw, and we're not going to time it perfect.
Awesome. All right, next question. I'll throw to Emily and Darren. I've read millennials are evaluating the overall cost of owning a home together with their values and choosing to still rent. What are your thoughts on this in the long term?
Well, I can right now from the statistics that we have, millennials are the largest group of first-time home buyers right now. So we have millennials entering the housing market at a rate that they never have previously. So I'm not sure. I know there is some trepidation, or there was some trepidation about getting into the real estate market previously, but at this point, that seemed to go by the wayside, which is a reason why if you're a first-time home buyer, the inventory is at probably an all-time low right now because so many people have entered that segment of the market.
Absolutely. David Carrier, this one is for you. It's a little bit, the question is a little bit lengthy for setup, but I think it's worth investigating. So Leanne says, I have a child with severe medical needs in which she needed to have them put on Medicaid due to the medical needs and that sort of thing. Child's almost 18, independent on Medicaid and SSI. What do they need to do to protect themselves, and how do they protect their limited resources? We're in our upper 50s, debt-free, but due to said circumstances, our 401k not as large as we'd like it to be.
Yeah, so mom and dad are going to be okay because the kids' debts are not their debts. One of the things, in fact, we just had a family this afternoon where similar situation, but a late onset disease. So not 18, but older. The same rules apply. And the question is, how do we make sure that any inheritance that the child gets does not get wasted and I say wasted because Medicaid will pay for these things. And if you're going to pay for them instead of Medicaid, that means there's a whole bunch of other things that the child is not getting that your money could go to. That's why I call it waste. Do they need the basic services? Yeah. But if we can get Medicaid to pay them, let's do that. And let's hang on to your funds for the extras, for the additional stuff. There's lots of folks out there who have no extras, who don't get anything extra because they didn't work, they didn't save, unlucky, tragedy, all kinds of reasons for that, okay? But if you did work, even though your 401k has been drawn down, but your house is paid off, you're debt-free, you're in your 50s, you got another, 15, 20 years, 10 years, 15, 20 years, however long of working, you have the ability to really add a margin of comfort, a margin of safety to your son's life. Now, the way we approach this, we don't put beneficiaries on anything. We don't do beneficiary designations because you don't know. Right now, you know, the questioner knows that their son is going through a rough patch, right? What if that happened 20 years from now? It does happen. People get strokes in their mid-40s and their 50s, right? And you don't know. So what we do every single time we put together a plan, we plan as if the child were needing Medicaid additional funds so that the inheritance is icing on the cake. Now you set that up so that if the kid doesn't have those needs, well, we haven't locked up the money. The money's available for the kid. Do whatever you want with it. That's fine. But you always plan as if you don't know, plan as if you don't know what the future holds. Because guess what? You don't. That's just
Truth.
reality.
Absolutely. All right, we got time for one more question, and then it appears like Nicole is here, which is amazing. So Emily, last question is for you because I think this is tailoring off the first question I asked you. In the current market, how important is it to make major improvements when you're showing a house? Not just minor, declutter, put the couch in the right place, but how important is it to make major improvements?
Yep. So right now, I mean, it is a seller's market. Inventory is low. So if you're considering a very large, very costly improvement, again, I would talk to your local realtor, but at this point, it's case by case, but I don't know that I would recommend doing like a huge investment right before you're going to sell. I think that there's ways to be really smart and cost conscious while making your home really appealing to a large audience.
Awesome. Thank you, my friends. This has been awesome. If we've got time at the end, we'll bring you all back and see if we can get into some more questions. But right this very second, I want to welcome to the stage Nicole Curtis, and likely you already know her. She is a New York Times bestselling author and star of HGTV's Rehab Addict with over 20 years of experience in home renovation, 120 episodes of TV. And Nicole is best known for her fierce advocacy for rebuilding homes and community work. Rehab Addict has been a staple on HGTV for over the past decade and recently aired its newest season, Rehab Addict Rescue, earlier this year and on HGTV as well as Discovery Plus. Nicole is currently in production here in Michigan, where the show is based, and she will obviously answer questions at the end of the interview. But Nicole, how are you?
Yeah, I'm doing great. How are you guys?
I am amazing.
Yeah, lots of great talks going on, and yeah, it's a busy time, right? I mean, everything's busy right now, and it's.
I'm sure. Yeah, I'm sure it's super busy. So let's jump right into this so we can chop it up a little bit. And so, first question I want to get into is, what's a way in which homeowners should think about their homes from an investment standpoint? This is obviously something that you're an expert at, and I wonder if there's some tips you could give people to look at their home perhaps in a different way.
I have been in real estate investment for about 25 years now, and I've been a realtor, I've been an investor, I've been a rehabber, I've been on TV. And the biggest mistake I see people doing is that they don't look at this as what it is. And buying a house, having a house is probably the largest financial investment situation, learning experience, what have you, that most of us will ever have in our lifetimes. And I think some people are so casual about it, like, oh, we're just going to go buy a house, that they don't put that much thought into it. And so that's what I've really always done as an investor. Someone that always educates everyone on that simple fact. You have to look at this as strongly as you would your stocks, your retirement plan. Your house is it for some people. For someone like me as a seasoned real estate investor, I don't have a 401k. I have houses that we invested in. So really driving that home. And, when I was first starting out in real estate, that's really where I gained my real estate business, was because people knew that if they came to work with me, I wasn't going to be just a turnkeyer. I wasn't going to go in and just be like, oh, I'm going to show you a house and let's pick you out some drapes to go with it. I'd be like, hi, let's look at where you want to be in 10 years with this house. Can you grow with it? I never sold a client a house where they weren't going to move right in and have some sweat equity and already some equity to gain. So that's something I always focus on. I get nicknamed a lot like the anti-HGTV person because I'm always about money first. So I always drive that home. I've always driven home to my clients, and that's what we've always wanted to show on the television show, is just that, at the end of the day, I'm in love with old houses, but they also have to make financial sense to me. I'm not going to bankrupt my family in order to have a beautiful old home.
And so, my next question would be, is that the number one thing that people get wrong, is that they don't put the money first, right? They'll have millions of other reasons why they get into a house.
Yeah.
And then 10 years down the road, they're like, well, that was a mistake.
Yeah. Or, you get into these situations where people buy a home and they don't look into like 2 years or 3 years. We've seen this happen throughout, the last decade, where people buy a house that they can't afford, or they buy a house on all this, and they get approved and they get the loan, and then they're bankrupt, and I roll in and I buy their house on a short sale or foreclosure, and it's one of those situations where I really drive that home all the time to people, as I'm probably a little redundant with it, but it's really focusing on the point that, you want to make sure that the house is an asset. And if you're just buying it because you're in love with the flooring, which is probably engineered, it's not going to last 5 minutes, then you're going to lose it anyway. Let's really do that. And I am still friends with everyone I ever sold a house to. I swear. And, I love saying, what's your appreciation at this year? And I'm like, you're welcome, but I really do. I really do drive that home to people all the time. And it's something that we look at. I really save a lot of homes, and we put a lot of money into these homes, but it's also one of those things. I just had a situation the other day where I'm doing the ceiling of a porch, and what was originally there, how much is that going to cost me? And is that money going to be well invested? And, looking at every single different part of it. So it is really different, but when people do it that way, again, it might be your home that you're going to have forever. And that's another thing I discuss with people. Like, how long do you see yourself in this house? If it's your forever home and you're going to be there for 20, 30 years, you know what? It's going to appreciate naturally, because real estate is not supposed to be this buy it, flip it, make the money, move in, move out. And when you're buying a house for your family, it is about looking at long-term goals. And that's really the idea of it all. And, like our latest season, we worked with homeowners, in Rehab Attic Rescue, which is a switch. We've always worked on my own projects. And, that was one of the things that I discussed with people. Like, when we're going to look at how much money we're going to put into your kitchen, I'm asking you, how long are you going to be in this house? Because if you're going to put 50 grand into your kitchen, it's going to take you X amount of years to get that back in equity. So if you have to sell next year, you're in the hole. And so, it really, starts to, make people think, and then they're like, okay. And then I approve them to have bigger projects if they're going to stay there longer.
Awesome. So let's kind of focus around that. It's obviously the point of this season. And I know this isn't for every house, because you walk in and every project's going to be a little bit different, but is there an order in your brain when you're thinking about a house as an investment that you rehab? Like, what are the first things that you rehab, and what are maybe the last things that you would ever think about rehabbing?
No, I'm really glad I'm not on a job site right now, because you saying, is there an order in your brain? My entire crew would be like, no, there's no order in your brain. Like, we're switching something again. I walk into every single house, and I always ask people, and I always ask myself, what do I have more of right now? Time? Where is this really going to get me? So when I first see a house, within 10 minutes, I have a budget already done. And I'm not somebody that pulls up tech and I'm doing notes on here. I got a Sharpie. In fact, I had somebody today being like, I don't know if the bank's going to accept this. You just wrote a check to me with a Sharpie. And I'm like, trust me, it's all I write in. They're going to take it. But I get that Sharpie out and I run right through it. So I look around. Obviously, you have the things that you have to have. You have to have a roof. You have to have running electricity. You have to have plumbing. You have to have heating. You don't have to have a different backsplash in your kitchen. So I always, put a plan together for that. You always have to budget the cost for the must-haves versus the I wants. And that really helps people pick out a house too, and really puts them on the right path, because a lot of times, people will, watch a show and they'll be like, oh, well, it's only going to cost me $5 to fix the kitchen. And I didn't even think about the mechanics first. And then you also have to look at your own skill set, which we have been seeing. All these people have been home for so long in their houses. And we get emails every single day of people being like, oh my gosh, I tore this out. And I'm like, oh, why would you have torn that out? So really, it's, again, getting back to the nuts and bolts of all of it. Your plumbing, your heating, your roof and foundation, things that are going to keep the house working and sound. Everything else is just fluff. Fluff you can always put later on a list. fluff you can save up for. But if you don't put those things first, then you're going to be in a house that needs a roof within a year, and you don't have the money for it because you spent $10,000 on a kitchen you didn't have.
So that leads me to the next question, which is you sort of alluded to it. We've been at home for 18 months. We all have a different appreciation or blind hatred of the place that we live right now because we've been stuck in it for so long.
I have a hatred for the house I'm in right now. So yeah.
And that's what I mean. Like, you either fell in love with it because you got to use it in a different way, or you just want to move or change some things around. And so I would imagine, based on the emails that you're getting, there's a lot of people that started with small projects, which we'll talk about in a second, and sort of graduated and eventually found themselves in a project that they were out over their skis on. And so what sort of advice do you give to people where they go, oh no, I did this and I don't have any idea how all of this works, and now my kitchen is exposed, right?
One, don't call me because I'm full up on that. And I'm working. Listen, we did this season with the homeowners, and after 10 years, I picked a select group that had emailed me enough, and I said, we're going to rescue you. We're going to do it. But I'm back to my own projects now, people, and we're filming, and I want to get my own houses done. We're doing my lake house that's been under construction for 7 years. So don't call me. But and don't hound me at like Eastern Market or something. I'm there antiquing, but I think it's really evaluating all the time. First rule of thumb for me is, if it's going to kill you, don't do it. Call in an expert. You can change out a light fixture. Don't be changing out your electrical panel on a Saturday morning because you're bored. But I think it is really evaluating your skill set, and small projects first. Celebrate your small successes. Don't tear up every single room in the house. Pick one room, get it done, move to the next, which is very, very hard. We get back to that. Is there an order in your brain? I am so guilty of that. I go into a house like a tornado, and I want to demo everything at once. And then I want to do this, I want to do that. But I'm also in the business of construction, so I can do
Sure.
that. But it's even a challenge for me. So that's why I really, really tell people, like, really focus on little tiny things and get some confidence behind you. Because there's nothing worse than starting something and not being able to finish it. It just defeats you. And then you have a house. Again, if you get in a situation where you have to sell, or who knows where your job's going to be when we all get through this, and you have a kitchen that's tore up, what are you going to do? So it's really about that. And I think it is one of those things where I always tell people, focus on hiring the right people to do the right jobs. For old houses, if somebody walks in and they show disdain on their face right away, they're probably not experienced in old houses. They're not going to be your expert you need. So really do that, and check the licenses on your contractors. Like, I would think that's a given. There's little things called the internet where you can go right up and Google anyone and see if they have a valid building license. If they have any lawsuits against them, you can check with your local city. That is so important. So many people right now are in hot water because they've hired people that say there's something and they're not.
All right, Nicole, you mentioned a second ago, start with small projects. And I feel that one, right? Because every time I get a small project done, for me, it feels like the Super Bowl, because I am not particularly handy. But for people who, again, are messing around in their house and just want to do some updates, is there one that you would sort of throw out and go, start with this one? Because if you do this, you'll feel like you did something amazing, and then you can graduate to step number 2.
I mean, paint. It sounds like, everybody can paint. Well, I've been in this industry a long time. Not everyone can paint. I promise you that. We used to have a joke, like, are you somebody we should put in a closet to paint? Or are you someone that gets like a wall out in the open that we're going to see? And I love, so many people have been like, I'll go to the closet. I'm like, thank you for your honesty. But small things like that, painting, ripping out carpeting is not a huge deal. It's just these people that go in with sledgehammers and think they're going to take out a wall. And then they find out like, oh, hey, it's holding up our house. But I think, listen, little tiny things, worst case scenario, if you have the money to do it, you screw it up, you call somebody in, they got to fix it. But definitely, I am so against anyone going into unnecessary debt to get things on the wish list versus the things that they have to have. It's one thing if your furnace blows and you got to finance it. I get it. You didn't have the money for that. But to go in and put yourself in house debt over things like a prettier kitchen, don't do it. Do it yourself. And if you can't do it, wait till you can have the skill set or hire someone that can get that done for sure.
Absolutely. And then last question for you. Again, this housing market has been very enticing for a lot of people. And so if people have gotten into that space and want to buy homes and flip them as an investment,
Yes.
given this market, what sort of advice would you give to them?
One, stay out of my historic homes unless you're actually somebody that loves preservation and renovation, because right now what's going on in all these cities, that everyone is clobbering the crap out of all of our historic homes. So don't do that. Go flip in the suburbs all day long. I'll support you. I'll even come to your open houses and help you sell that house if you promise not to do anything bad to an old house. But again, we're in this thing again where we were, 10 years ago, where people think there's such a quick buck. There is, for people that have the experience, the knowledge, and the willingness to grow and learn from their experiences. If you have no experience in house flipping, do not think that you're going to go in and make $1 million right off the bat and do this. You're going to lose it. You're going to lose your butts. I have seen people mortgage their family home to go do a flip, and then the flip doesn't sell. There's a story about carrying 2 mortgages because your investment property isn't selling and you have to pay your own. It's not fun. So it's really about that. Is there money to be made right now? Yes. But you have to look at it. It's not easy money. If it was easy money, everybody would be doing it. And sometimes I look at a project and I'm like, why is this still on the market? Because I know that there's investors way more savvy than myself, right? And I think a lot of people don't look at it like that way. You have to look at it again as in, this is the money that puts the roof over my family's head. And I really have to look at it seriously. So going into that, one, if you're not a licensed real estate agent, that's silly. Any investor, any serious investor that I've ever met has their real estate license and is so educated about real estate. 2, know something about banking, make a relationship with a proper banker, because the wrong interest rate, your line of credit that's only for 90 days, you're getting hard money, you're going to be upside down. And what if your flip doesn't sell? I'm in a situation right now where I need to sell one of our houses that's been on the market, and it's in Minneapolis. No one's buying in Minneapolis right now. I can't sell it. Luckily, I've had a plan, so it's okay that it's sitting there like a museum right now. But I've seen a lot of people lose good money, and it doesn't have to be stressful if you go into it. Don't bite off more than you can chew. I've never seen that end in a perfect situation for anyone. But if you have the money to risk, then that's a different situation. But I really don't know a lot of people that get into that the first time flipping that have expendable money. You go into the business because you need to make that money back. So it's just always that. Never, ever, ever, ever take a mortgage on your personal family home to do a flip. That's the one thing I always ask people not to do. Just because I've seen those situations, we do get those calls. And a lot of time there's nothing we can do to help.
Nicole Curtis, this has been absolutely awesome. The show is Rehab Addict Rescue. You can find it on HGTV. No?
No.
What is the show?
We're done with that. Yeah.
Okay.
No, we're back to Rehab Addict. We're back to
we're back to Rehab.
Yes, we are.
The
Rehab
show
Addict
is Rehab Addict. Let's go with that. HGTV and Discovery Plus. And as Nicole said, do not call her because she's not doing your houses anymore. She's doing her houses. Thank you so much for the time. Have a wonderful, wonderful evening.
Yeah, you too. Bye, guys.
Take care. All right, let's bring David Carrier back in. I've got 2 more questions I want to give to him, and then we'll wrap it up for today because I want to get to these questions. So David, if you could jump back in and let me know when you're on. There you are. David Carrier, I've got 2 questions for you. The first question from somebody was, can they write their own will?
Yeah, you can. Practically anything a lawyer can do for you, you can do for yourself. When you're flipping a house, right? Okay, put some shingles on. Why not? Okay, I can do the painting. Sure. I can replace a faucet. All right. Hey, how about the junction box? Why not? Hey, how about the electrical system? How about the entire roof? Well, it's not that you can't do it yourself. It's that these things wind up frequently, I wouldn't say usually, but frequently so messed up, it's not even funny, because there really are a lot of things that have to be considered when you do this kind of stuff. So can you do it yourself? Absolutely. And you'll make hourly bill very happy untangling the mess later on. Just saying.
All right. And then last question for you was who owns you were talking a lot about the trust. They wanted to know who owns the trust.
You do. It's your trust. Look, you have money in the bank, right? Whose money is it? Is it the bank's money or is it your money? It's your money. Yeah, but it's in the bank. Yeah, but it's your money.
Sure.
When you have a trust, it's the same thing. The money is in the trust, but it's your money. People get this idea and they like to say, oh, I don't have any money. It's all owned by the trust or something. People say things like that. You might as well say that the bank owns your money. It's not a helpful way of thinking about it. It's your money. Okay, let's
Gotcha.
not lose sight of that.
Awesome.
Your trust.
My friend. Thank you for the time, my friend. All right, I will take one more pass at the Q&A and see if there's any in here before I let everybody go for the day. All right. All right, my friends. I want to say thank you to Lindsay Moore for being today's moderator, for Nicole Curtis for joining us, as well as all of our other panelists who have joined us. If you like today's event, make sure you join our next session. It's October 26th. We'll cover the topic of Medicare. Expect to dive deep into the 2022 Medicare options and build the foundation for a golden retirement. You can find the sign-up link for this free virtual event right now in the chat. And before we go off screen, another big thank you to our sponsors, the law offices of David L. Carrier, PC, and Southern Michigan Bank and Trust Wealth Management. And of course, as I said, to all of our speakers that joined us today for all of the insight that they gave us. Have a wonderful evening. We'll talk again soon. Take care, guys.